Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. Special sessions continue on. We had 2 weeks of politics to talk about, so we had to have a full panel discussion, starting with Stephen Roberts, Chief of Staff to the Sheriff of the City of St. Louis, and running for Alderman this week, right?
I am, yep, on July 11th.
Good to have you on. We always have to say Stephen Roberts Jr. now when the legislator's on. So,
Yeah.
Jane Duger, friend of the show, welcome back. Cam Moag, Spencer Fain. We don't have time to list them all.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Representative Phil Cristofanelli, rising star in the Republican caucus in the House. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
And Joe Lakin, best hair in Missouri politics, Republican aficionado.
Wow.
The Missouri political world, especially on the Republican side, probably got a little bit of adjustment on Monday this week. Congresswoman Ann Wagner, a leading candidate for Senate, said she's not going to run. What does that do to the field?
Yeah, I think everybody was pretty well settled on believing she had decided to move forward. So I think a big change. Obviously, with 2016, Republicans have a full slate of qualified, quality candidates with all the statewide elected officials. I think people are looking at Josh Hawley right now, seeing if he's interested. But if not, I think the field's wide open. Folks like Paul Kurtman, I think, looking at it as well.
There's Paul Kurtman. There's Vicky Hartzer's made some intentions. Blaine Luke Meyer's discussed it. State Treasurer Eric Schmidt is somebody being talked about right now. Representative, you're somebody that I know has a lot of connections on the right part of the party. That is the base that everybody will be probably reaching for in this election. Who starts off with the lead there?
You know, I think it could be any one of them. Todd Richardson was looking at it for a while. I don't know if he's ruled it out or if this has changed his considerations at all, but he'd have a lot of fans in the House if he did decide to run. I think we've got a deep bench in Missouri of leaders that could give Claire quite the challenge. So I think that we're going to be sending her home next year.
Is that bench so deep that you almost certainly have a primary, though? I mean, that is very true. There is a huge, deep bench of Republicans that are ambitious and probably qualified and talented enough to run.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I don't necessarily believe that primaries are a bad thing. Everybody said in the governor's race last year that the worst thing ever would be a big primary. We had a big primary, and then we won anyway. So
if you're in Missouri, you got Donald Trump on your side, you got to feel good, right, Jane Duker? I remember when we were on KMOX, she'd be like, "Oh, please let Donald Trump be the nominee."
I know.
And I just said, "Well, you're a big fancy Clayton lawyer. I'm just a simple old white trash hillbilly from West Butler County." But it kind of worked out.
I think
Donald
it'll
Trump
work
was the
out
best friend.
It'll kind of work out in the long run.
Is the long run a
national?
national election where you retain both houses of Congress, sweep the Missouri executive branch, supermajorities in the presidency?
I know we're going to win the Missouri Senate race,
Is
so
that
I'm
right?
happy about that.
So you know Ann Wagner. I think
I
it's
do.
interesting. You'll see people get a little callous, and maybe this is the show for the callous, but they'll talk about people they don't know by their last name, and they'll move them around like checkers pieces on a board. These are real people. It is a huge state, and if you've never driven from Trenton to Portageville, you don't know the commitment it takes to run statewide. I don't personally know why she was going to run or wasn't, but I think it's an interesting thing. I think sometimes you don't talk about the personal commitment it takes, and not just on the candidate, but on their family.
Absolutely, and you need to 1,000% be in.
Yeah.
And so if she's decided that she wasn't 1,000% in, she did the right thing. She's a rising star in the House. I was always confused why she would want to make the move in the first place, because she's going up the ladder. The world is hers, and so I think stepping out of this very volatile and toxic political environment is a very smart move.
So you know Claire McCaskill.
Very well.
I think she's probably the most talented politician, maybe the governor, but I mean a very talented politician, somebody that I think is very respected in Washington amongst the serious crowd. What do you think? Which one of the Republicans would give her the stiffest challenge?
You know, I think there's some Republicans that have not really surfaced. If you look at the races across the country for the last few years, it's the multimillionaires who've gotten into it because they've kind of gotten bored with life and said, you know, I want to give back before I retire. So I think what you're going to find, there's some names that you have not heard circulated, probably non-elected officials who will raise the money. A lot of it will be their own money, as we saw in the last gubernatorial race in the state, who will say run. I mean, in Illinois right now, you've got two multimillionaires, Mr. Pritzker and the existing governor, who are running against each other. And we're a year away before the primary over there. So watch and see what the natural trend is.
Joe Lakin, to me, just talking about Congresswoman Wagner's decision not to run, she shared a geographic base and probably a support, maybe in a fundraising base, with the state treasurer, Eric Schmidt. He's somebody that I don't think was seriously looking at this until this past week, and I know he is now. There's two questions. Does he really run in a contested primary right after he was elected? And then Josh Hawley, there's the ladders ad. And then there's he doesn't know if he's going to run. I have found Josh Hawley has taken to the AG job very seriously. He might have the most independence and backbone of any statewide elected official right now. I think it's sincere that he cares about the job, but how long can you do the Hamlet act of I don't know before you have to make a decision?
Yeah, I mean, I based on what I can tell, and I just believe the read on him is that he's genuinely conflicted on the race. Senator or State Treasurer Schmidt obviously ran a great race last cycle. A huge vote getter, won big, along with the Republicans statewide. So, yeah, I think he certainly looks at it. I think the key is making sure that we've got a candidate in a midterm. Republicans are restless with Washington, want to make sure we're getting our agenda done. I think somebody who can motivate the base, get people turned out, get people excited, I think that's the kind of candidate we need to be looking for.
Does Josh Hawley run?
I think he has a hard decision to make. Ultimately, I imagine he'll probably get in because this is an opportunity that doesn't come around too often.
I do think, though, there were folks that thought because they didn't know him, he'd never served in elected office, you didn't know what kind of attorney general he'd be. He's at least taking the job seriously, treating it with respect, and I think there's a large number of folks that are impressed by not only the fact he shows up every day, he treats the office with respect, but he's actually got some independence. If you're looking for somebody with a backbone, it's not a high draft pick anymore, but he's one of them.
He's a rock star, and I think he's got a bright future no matter what he does.
State Treasurer Eric Schmidt, he's somebody that's probably the leading economic voice for conservatives. I mean, this tax cut that Missourians are going to enjoy next year, that's a lot of his work. Is that something he could bring to that race and make an issue?
Having 16 years in government gets you a lot of successes that you can draw from in a campaign and shows that you have the real experience to get the job done. So I think Eric Schmidt would be pretty strong as well.
Jane Duger, who's the person Claire McCaskill doesn't win against? I think it might be an Eric Schmidt.
Maybe. I mean, I do think that Vicky Hartzler is an interesting concept because I think the urban-rural split is still alive and well in Missouri. And so I think that Josh Hawley may have the money sort of insiders, from the urban areas, but Vicky Hartzler may have a different view. So I think that could be interesting. I mean, I agree. I'm not sure the field is out there yet. She'll pick when she knows. And look, Claire she's a phenomenal politician.
Yeah, David Wassinger, no record,
right?
Fun to raise.
People, I mean, they want to count her out, and that's always a mistake.
Prediction: who is the Republican nominee?
I think again it's someone who we don't know yet at this point. That is someone who's got a lot of money, who'll bring in natural resources, probably even the President of the United States to help him campaign in this.
Well, what do you think?
Yeah.
I think it's too early to predict, and I also think that the midterm is not even gelling yet. So I don't have a pick yet.
It's a volatile
Later,
time.
It is volatile.
Who is the final person? Not who you're supporting. Who do you think runs?
Who do I think wins?
Spit it out. Does Schmidt run?
Schmidt runs.
Does Hawley run?
Probably.
Hartzler?
I don't think so.
A Kurtman?
Yes.
Maybe a Wassinger or another person that's not on the radar?
At least one outside.
At least one. What do you think? Schmidt run?
I think he may.
Kurtman?
I think he may.
Hawley?
I don't know. I think he's a true coin flip. If he does, he's a heck of a
Do you
candidate.
buy the indecisiveness of this?
Yeah, I mean,
I kind of do, and I normally wouldn't have, but I kind of do.
Josh Hawley came onto the scene. He didn't wait for his turn. He didn't wait for anybody to tell him it was his turn.
Yeah.
He does it his way, and he did a hell of a job doing it his way last cycle.
Let's talk about something we're having. There's a reset in the state of Missouri on the special session on abortion. The governor had to adjust his call for the special session this week. What does that mean, and what does it do?
The legislative process is messy. There was a bill that initially came through the Senate, went back to the House. The House made some changes, strengthened the bill in my mind. We want to make sure that the call covers everything that we covered in the very strong House bill that we crafted a couple weeks ago. And so I think the governor made some adjustments there just to make sure that everything we're doing is constitutional and will hold muster against the courts.
Procedurally, what does it mean? Does the Senate have to come back? Does the House have to come back in this new session?
So it has to go back to the Senate because they have not passed the final changes that we made.
So he just added to his call.
He did.
It's always that extra last part of every special session call where he can add stuff.
Correct.
So he didn't change the special, he just added to cover the House bill.
Correct, and ideally the Senate will pass the House bill and then we will send it to the governor and I'll go home.
The Senate passed this bill, right? I mean,
Yeah, I believe so.
it's it's not exactly Joe Montana to Jerry Rice completing a pass, but you can pass an abortion bill in the state of Missouri, right?
Oh, absolutely. But I also think that, the timing of the change in the call raises some interesting issues.
But do you not think? I mean, look, there's been folks that have called
They'll
this a
pass it
stunt.
again.
The city bill was a stunt too. I mean, this is dueling stunts. If you're going to call them stunts and
Oh,
question people's motives, dueling stunts.
On the underlying issue, one of the few Democrats who absolutely agree that that was just something to poke the legislature. I'm not a fan of that.
Does this stand muster
Yeah,
in the courts?
I don't think it'll stand muster, but I've got a bigger problem. I think this is government at its worst in the sense that the Board of Aldermen, when they enacted legislation, it wasn't the best thing to do. And then we get the legislature who feels that they have to respond to it. How many hundreds of thousands of dollars have we in this state now wasted because of people's egos? And let's get beyond that. It doesn't make sense. If
But
folks,
is there fault on both sides here? If you want to impute people's motives on one side, the St. Louis Board of Aldermen, this was also a stunt.
No,
If
I
you're
think
gonna say that-
dueling
yeah,
government
I mean, it is
makes
a-
government
It
look
does.
bad,
It's
and it
just
makes people question if So I don't think it's the way to run the
We're going to be back with dueling politicos right after this break on This Week in Missouri Politics.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greitens said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Nobody likes power outages, including us. That's why Ameren, Missouri is investing in new equipment and smarter technology to reduce outages and keep pace with future needs. And it's working. We're in the top 25% in the nation for reliability. And on average, our rates are 18% lower than other Midwestern states. Making sure the power's there when you need it. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. Jane Duker, the Secretary of State, gave some information to the federal government they requested that by Missouri law he has to do. It's been done many, many times. He caught some backlash from the right, but what do you want him to do, not follow the law?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's the law that he was required to turn this information over. So I think
Secretary of State's been breaking the law for 20 years?
No,
in
I
Missouri?
think there are certain things that statutorily he may not have been able to give, and somebody may fight about that. But the underlying premise that there's some kind of voter fraud going on and it's rampant in Missouri or anywhere else is ridiculous. And so to feed that narrative, I think, is irresponsible.
Some folks argue we have voter ID now. That should cut down on voter fraud.
yeah, it's tough. June 1st, we passed the law. I'm in a primary general election on July 11th. I'll be in the first for Alderman 28th Ward. I'll be in the first campaign since that law. So we've been very, very cautious. And I will tell you, when I'm out knocking on doors, getting phone calls, the biggest concern that a lot of our voters, particularly our seniors, are saying is, what do I have to bring? I don't know. I don't want my vote disenfranchised. And we have to explain the process to them. Now, I will tell you, I've been involved with politics in a long time in the city of St. Louis, and I've never seen, quote, voter ID fraud. I mean, I go way, way back to, knocking on doors in high school. I've never seen it in the city of St. Louis. So for me as a candidate, I have to now explain to folks, your vote will not be disenfranchised, but you've got to bring this form of ID and you've got to do this. And so I've been working very closely with the St. Louis Board of Elections to make sure that the people are aware of what's going on.
Interesting. Joe Lagan, you're somebody that I know knows Jay Ashcroft very well. He just followed the law, right?
Yeah, he did. And you guys were talking about stunts earlier. I mean, this is a stunt on the left. I mean, you've got...
Is it on the left, though?
It is. Look, there is very little concern about this on the right. People recognize that publicly available information should be given when requested. And to make that point, I mean, you've got Jason Kander, who's out here beating on Secretary Ashcroft, who gave this exact same information 380 times in the 4 years he was in office.
But at some point, left-wing nut jobs and right-wing nut jobs connect, and maybe they have connected here.
Real ID, the gun database. I mean, this is situational outrage.
I don't see see that there is a lot of consternation on the right. I think conservatives recognize that this commission is designed to look at voter fraud. If there is none, then it will disband with no findings. But if it looks at it, they find that there is voter fraud. And to suggest that there is no voter fraud is ridiculous. There is voter fraud. It has happened in Missouri. And you can argue about voter impersonation fraud or not, but voter fraud has occurred and it does occur.
Interesting. What do you think? I mean, I don't think the Secretary of State violated the law here.
This is the same information they give to every statewide campaign that runs a campaign in Missouri. I mean, it's the list of voters that
Yep.
you use to run a campaign.
If you took somebody up there and handed them $100, they'd give you this right now.
Exactly.
Right? Any of
And
our
this
viewers can
idea
walk up
that-
and get
One
it.
of 3 states that complied. I hardly think that there are, obviously people are outraged because only 3 states complied.
But it's a state question, right? It depends on what your state law is. So to suggest that he should do it because other states have is to miss the point. If your state requires it, you should do it. So he's doing what his state law requires.
Joe Lake, let's talk about another function of state law. Since we've been gone for the 4th, the governor vetoed a couple bills. One was the conservatory in Kansas City, a pretty big project over there led by Warren Erdman. So let me just ask you, you're a big-time Webster Groves Republican aficionado. I'm just a simple hillbilly, but the governor said politicians are addicted to spending your money. Do you agree with me that Todd Richardson, who voted for this, is probably the greatest Republican speaker in the history of the state? Or do you agree with the governor that he's a politician addicted to spending money?
Well, look, Speaker Richardson is a fantastic speaker. He's a great steward of taxpayer dollars. Obviously, there are political differences on this issue. The legislature passed it. I wonder a little bit about the rhetoric with the number of people who voted for this or allowed it to pass. But again, I'm not terribly familiar with the details of the
Representative
proposal.
Chris Vanelli is Justin Alferman, Kevin Engler, is Scott Fitzpatrick the budget chair, who probably knows the budget better than anybody in the executive branch. Is he a politician addicted to spending your money?
Listen, I was on the other side of that vote. I voted no. I didn't believe that at this time, when our infrastructure is crumbling, that this investment made sense. You know, we were trying to make Missouri more business friendly, and last time I checked, the major employers that are looking to come to this state do not require people that do interpretive dance and play the trombone.
Well, Warren Erdman knows a little bit about economic development, a little bit more than me. Last time, if we compared W-2s, I'd say, well, we compare K-1s, but he'd know more about EcoDevo than me. But I guess my point is that's a statesman-like explanation of your opposition. Calling Elijah Haar a politician addicted to spending your money, it sounds a lot different.
You know, ultimately, I'm responsible for the investments made by the taxpayers back home. I didn't think that this was the right one, and so I voted no. And I stand with the governor in his decision to veto this.
So Jane Duger is not an interesting thing. I mean, you could make an argument like the representative, like a statesman, or you could toss bombs and call Representative Rocky Miller a politician addicted to spending money.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure of the strategy, having been in the executive branch and been with the governor. I mean, this governor declared war on the Senate. Now he's declaring war on the House. I don't know how that helps you. I mean, if you're not interested in governing.
I just don't see Senator Wasson as a politician addicted to spending your money.
I mean, I stand with the speaker on this one. Did he hear that? I know that the world is shaking. However, I think that declaring war on lawmakers really makes people question whether you're interested in governing or you're interested in a soundbite.
As a St. Louis Democrat, you've got to be soaking this up. I mean, it's an amazing thing.
It's terrific. The only thing that I'm concerned about is that I wish we had a little more state money that could come into some of the city programs and stuff. But when the state leadership is fighting over little stuff, there's not much left for us to get. Once upon a time, there was funding as well as federal funding that could be directed to city programs that could help improve the quality of life in our city.
The economic engine of our
Jane
state.
Duke, let's talk about
Yeah.
a fund swap. It's an idea that's been done in the past, been kicked around before. I think both sides could argue whether it's good. The governor called it a gimmick pushed through in the middle of the night with no public hearing. He won't sign an unconstitutional one-time state fix to a real problem. Well, I don't think Senator Kehoe or Senator Koenig, who voted for it, or Senator Hoskins would agree with that.
No, and I think a lot of people worked really hard to get that done the way it was done. And I think that some people are expressing frustration that it would have been nice for him to have engaged in the process when it was occurring rather than, demonizing it afterwards.
Well, this is not a problem you can fix on Facebook. This is a serious thing. Do you believe that Senator Wallingford is a frivolous politician that pushes things through in the middle of the night, one-time gimmicks? And again, you voted against these things, but I doubt you would set up and call Senator Richard somebody that's frivolous with taxpayer money.
You know, on the policy itself, it was bad policy. This idea that we're going to flip up all the couch cushions of state government just to find the loose change to hold over the welfare state for one extra year when we have a long-term problem does not make any sense. The House put forward a solution to this problem that would have fixed it for the long term and ending the property tax credit that we give to renters that don't even pay property taxes. That didn't make its way through the legislative process, but we're going to be right back in this decision next year.
That was an interesting, well-put way to do that. I noticed you didn't call anybody gimmicks or unconstitutional one-time fixes like the governor did.
He also didn't call the renters humans and elderly.
Joel Aiken, is it an interesting? Is an odd thing? You would think these barbs would be thrown from a Democrat. Instead, it's a newly Republican.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're in a new environment of politics. I think people are communicating directly with voters. They're not
That
communicating.
doesn't involve statesmen?
Well, look, I think it does. Obviously, policy differences here. You've got large majorities in the legislature. The governor's job is to defend his position, and that's what he's doing. Again, tough policy decisions. Very good, conservative, honest, hardworking lawmakers on both sides of each of those issues. But again, I think it's just part of the new media that we're in, and I
Maybe
think
the governor should fund a social service safety net for the addiction of politicians addicted to spending money, right? I mean, that'd be something I think everybody could support. Since we're talking about ideas, the governor put out a tax commission. And Jane Duker, your favorite old hillbilly columnist, predicted in February this was a witch hunt against rural Missouri programs. Folks from the big cities they like to see the geographic footprint of Missouri include rural Missouri. They just don't like any of their money going there. Right. I predicted this was all a sham and a waste of time, and it came out that they just issued a draft report that was actually a pretty good piece of public document. I mean, it was very intelligent.
In my opinion, and humble as it is, and having worked in government for 25 years, it was the best public policy piece I've seen.
Jane just said she was humble. Yeah. I missed that humble part.
Yes, I know. You were shaking now. But no, I think it was a complete package, closing corporate loopholes, getting rid of things that have needed to be done for decades, streamlining. It would even allow a tax cut on a more broad-based level if we get rid of all these loopholes and special interest garbage. And it was actually a phenomenal, but then they took that piece out of it.
City lawyers say special interest garbage, they're talking about rural Missouri on the product.
Yeah, no,
what do you think?
not.
I mean, it was. I think you have to give the people that wrote this credit. They actually took it seriously. Now, of course, the serious stuff was lopped out, and it was the sham that some hillbillies predicted. And actually, one of the commission members, Dave Barnes, owes me a cold frosty Anheuser-Busch product over the final product.
Right. But well, my big concern is that it was okay. I mean, you've got some very distinguished Missourians on board, but they're all elected officials for the most part. I don't understand why they didn't have business people. They could have had some journalists. They could have had some folks who even work on the social issues in this community. You would think that we need to look beyond kind of Jefferson City for leadership and reach out to a variety of different
I've heard everyone in
folks.
Jeff City is a corrupt career politician, but this did not look outside that. Representative, the final product was the ruse we all suspected it was from the beginning. At the end of the day, though, what do you think of what they actually produced?
Ultimately, I've always supported tax credit reform insofar as it leads to a fairer and flatter and lower tax burden for everybody. But what they did is they came up with a lot of interesting ways to get rid of tax credits, but no real explanation about how that was going to lower everyone else's taxes.
This is, I think, the problem. So Senator Hageman, I think, is probably one of the best statesmen. He actually attended some of the meetings. Now, on one hand, the governor wants you to believe he's part of a committee to give serious tax proposals. But 2 weeks ago, Senator Hageman is a politician addicted to spending your money. Joe Aiken, the narrative's a little confusing here. Is Elijah Har a serious person that should be on a committee? Or is he a politician addicted to spending your I can't keep up.
Well, we'll take these one at a time. I think Representative Har is a very serious person.
I would agree with you.
I think,
governor does.
Look, I talk and work alongside business people all the time. The biggest opportunity we have in this state, in this country this year, is comprehensive tax reform. People are getting killed by our tax code. I look forward to what they come up with. I think, like Representative Krista Finelli said, is cutting a bunch of programs to put more money into the state is not the answer. We need a comprehensive, broad-based tax cut to support.
So Jane Duker, the draft report that was a very serious document, it's been praised by a lot of people. Whether you agree with the conclusions or not, it was very well thought out. Included raising the gas tax, taxing internet sales, eliminating Eco-Devo programs and putting them just under the governor. and then the income tax that you don't pay on your federal income taxes, that would be raised, and then a gross receipts tax. I mean, that's a lot of tax increases.
Well, but if you read further, those kind of, like, for example, we're the only state in the country that allows you a tax cut because you've paid on time. Like, you don't get tax cuts for doing your job and paying your taxes on time. So you get rid of those loopholes, things that no other states are doing that are making us uncompetitive, not less competitive. Get rid of those, then do a broad-based tax cut. So if you look at things in isolation, you say tax increase. However, if you put the package together as a whole, where you say, look, we're going to make things fairer, get rid of some of the special interest and sort of the stupid tax cuts, then give everybody a tax cut, then more people benefit. And I that's the piece of it that I appreciated.
If you're a barber in Willow Springs, if you're a gun store owner in Trenton, if you're just filling your gas tank up in Ashland, if you're just putting gas in the truck, you say, yikes, good Lord. I mean, run for the hills. The politicians are coming for my money again.
The way that the final product came down, there's going to be a lot of skepticism towards
Well, I mean,
that
the final
proposal.
product was the joke most people made it out to be from the beginning.
Well,
but I
it
mean,
ended up being political.
the
They pulled out the
substantive
pieces.
thing was, I thought the substantive part of it was interesting, and I would willing to bet you that probably a lot of tax discussion going forward is pulled from that document, not the ridiculous one, but the one that came out
It's been
earlier.
the same discussion we've been having for decades. I mean, that's what
I mean, it's
people
just
forget.
a matter of
I mean,
arguing for rural Missouri. I think, Joe Ligon, I think this comes down to this whole tax credit fight with the inner city politicians will come down to Senator Richard. Not sure the House has the fortitude to tell him no, but Senator Richard's been rural Missouri's best friend for this millennium. I think maybe he's got one more fight left in him.
Yeah, that may be the case. I mean, Senator Richard, since his days as the House Economic Development Chairman before he became Speaker, has been in the thick of these, and I think he's going to have a lot to say about the final product.
I read some nice profile on him in Feminist magazine. I actually didn't. Last thing, real quick, when this comes down, do you think this passes the legislature? What they ended up
Oh,
recommending?
it'll pass, of course.
I think so.
Yep.
You mean this report?
Yeah.
No, it's not passing.
It'll
I
pass.
mean, it is a rule. I mean, representative goes back to a suburban district. I'm sure they're for it, right?
On the whole, but there'd have to be some changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's time to get the double barrels out in rural Missouri if you want to decimate the program that revitalized downtown Poplar Bluff, right?
Yeah, as someone who's chief of staff to the person carrying the last economic development bill in
Yep.
special session, I come to it with a little bit of skepticism.
As that person with all those accolades, who won the week?
I think Jay Ashcroft. I think holding his ground on the voter rolls, following the law, and not being
It shows he's a
bullied
serious
by.
person.
He is,
I mean,
and you talk about backbone with Attorney General Hawley. I think Jay Ashcroft is an independent person. People didn't expect it. They think he's a longtime Republican hack. He's not. He's a serious person who does good work.
Who won the week?
I think Josh Hawley won the week. Everybody's waiting for him to make a decision. That's a great place to be in politics.
Who won the week?
Ann Wagner. I think the idea that she's not getting into this crazy midterm and not having to sort of align herself with maybe beliefs that she doesn't
And maybe Ray
believe in.
Wagner and her family.
And maybe her family and the House and staying in
Who
the
won the week?
House.
I'd say the men and women of law enforcement, with the passage and enactment of the Blue Alert Bill, we're now consistent with 30 other states around the United States, so I think it's good for law
I'm
enforcement.
going to say Senator Mike Kehoe. He had SB 486 that you wonder, is the government capable of doing big economic development projects? This would do a lot for the state capital. And I was interesting. I had a friend that's been working in Nevada. He noticed something. He went to the Hoover Dam and looked at the big plaque, and it was part of a project labor agreement from back in the day. Wow.
Amen.
We'll leave that to soak until next week on This Week in Missouri Politics. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.